Welcome, and thank you for joining us on our live stream. We believe here at Active that you are worth knowing, so we created this content designed for you to explore your faith and belief wherever you're at. So welcome, and please enjoy the message.
Good morning, Active Church. How you guys doing? So excited to be here with you this morning. My name is Josh. I get the opportunity to serve out in our Redlands campus. It's really cool. We get to spend some time in worship and in just reflecting together. And it's just so good to be here with you this morning to take these next couple of moments to reflect together. Can I tell you guys a quick story about one time when I went ice skating? Yeah? Okay. So one time, I overheard my friends talking about this place, Icetown, and they all start getting excited, right? They're like, oh man, we should go ice skating. And so then I start telling them, oh man, I've never been ice skating before. I would love to go ice skating with you guys. And I just keep this thread going. I'm like, man, I'm so scared of going ice skating. I feel like as soon as my feet hit the ice, I'm gonna slip and fall. Finally, our college gets to Icetown and we all show up and I'm putting on the ice skates and I'm walking and trying to wobble on them. And then I step out into the ice rink and totally show them that I'm really good at ice skating and I start just going for it. When I was growing up as a kid, my brother and I used to be really into hockey because of the Mighty Ducks and I got really good at mocking ice skating. And so I would just like skate really good, skate backwards. Any of you guys know how to skate backwards on the ice? I'd do spins and stuff like that. And people were just like, oh my gosh, they hated me so much for bragging about something that I'm really good at. You know what's worse than bragging about something you're good at? Bragging about something that you're bad at. So a couple of months ago, I started this deception with Pastor James. I heard him talking about racquetball. Do you guys know what racquetball is? Racquetball is like a version of tennis, but it's inside a room. And I heard him talking about racquetball. He was so excited about playing and about getting different people to play with him. And in my mind, I said, I am going to trick James. And I told him, oh, racquetball? Bro, I'm so good at racquetball. I've been playing racquetball for years. And for a series of months, I kept streaming this lie to James that I was really good at racquetball. And he would ask me like, hey, can we go play today? And I would make excuses. Like, oh man, I'm so busy. I can't do it today, Pastor James. There's too much to do today. I can't play racquetball. And then finally, it was starting to get tense, right? It's like, hey man, do you know how to play racquetball or not? And so that night, I went on Wikipedia and I looked up what racquetball was. and I found out that there's this thing about racquetball that if you know can give you the advantage in the game. It's called the 4 quadrants. How many of you guys know about the 4 quadrants? Anybody racquetball players here? I still did not understand what racquetball was. And so I told James, I was like, oh, bro, I love racquetball. You don't know about the 4 quadrants? And he didn't know. And so in James's mind, he thought that I was really good at racquetball. This is months, you guys, this is months. And so then finally, I tell him, all right, James, you want to play me a game of racquetball? It's on. And so we go to the court. I don't even have another racket. What's it called? Is it called a racket? Is that what the thing's called? Is it a racket? I don't even have one of those. James has an extra, right? And he's starting to I think he's starting to figure out that I've got no idea what racquetball is. And so finally we start playing the game, and in that first hit, I score a point. And I'm like, man, maybe I am good at racquetball. Maybe this is my destiny to be a racquetball player. I have never lost at something by so much, you guys. It was the worst game of my life. I felt so defeated. James beat me the next couple of rounds, and it became super evident that I had no idea what I was doing. But then, in a stroke of good luck, James hits the ball into the wall, and it goes straight into his eye. And I didn't know what to think about it. I was wondering, God, are you on my side? Did you do this on purpose? He didn't. But I learned that day in a way that I think all of us have learned before, is that you have to be prepared for a moment if you're going to persevere. That you have to be prepared for life's moments if you're going to win at life. It turns out that the majority of life happens through choices that we make or choices that others make for us. And those choices, they affect us like raindrops on still waters. It creates ripple effects. And the choices that we make, they affect our lives. The choices that other people make around us, they affect our lives. And if we are not prepared for those choices, then we will find ourselves in tension. Someone makes a sharp right-hand turn, and all of a sudden, the whole traffic that is behind them, it changes the landscape of what's going to be happening in that drive. You choose to go to that one place for lunch, and then you run into that one person, and then you have that one conversation, and then it makes you think about that one thing, and then all of a sudden you're changing your job, career, choices. The choices that we make and the choices that other people make, they cause a ripple that affect our lives. You say those words, will you marry me? You cannot take them back, right? You cannot ask somebody to marry you and in that moment be like, I was kidding, never mind, nope. You cannot be at the altar and say, I do, and then she says I do, and be like, you know what, actually, I take it back. Once the words have been spoken, it changes the landscape of our realities. You take the new job opportunity, the diagnosis is given, you choose the university, you get into a relationship. The choices that we make, the choices that other people make affect our lives. And if you are not prepared for those moments, then you will not win at them. The thing about being unprepared in moments, I mean, have you ever found yourself in a moment like that? Have you ever found yourself unprepared for a moment? Have you ever found yourself faced with a crisis or a circumstance that you were just not prepared for? I'll give you an example of one that happened to me recently. I was hanging out with Pastor Joe out in LA, and we thought, man, this would be a really good time. This would be a great time for us to boost our Instagram following. Why don't we go out there and take some nice pictures on walls like all the other millennials, right? And so we go throughout LA, we park the car, go throughout different sections of LA, and like, ooh, this is a nice wall here, Joe, let's take a picture there. So, you guys see when they put their leg up? Why do we put our leg up for the picture, right? They do one of these. We take these different pictures throughout the day at LA, and then finally, we're walking back to my car, and the lighting is just perfect. It's literally kind of like this center aisle down there, and Joe begins to walk. It's what's called golden hour. The sun is setting, and there's a perfect silhouette. We're like, this picture right here is gonna boost our Instagram following, Joe. So I take a picture of him, and then I realize that off in the distance, there is a vehicle that is being towed, and it's my car, but I can't finish, I gotta finish taking the picture, right? And I'm like, man, that is really unfortunate. Gonna have to figure out what to do right after this. So unprepared. I've never gotten my car towed before. It's never happened to me. So my gut reaction was to vlog it. I get out my phone and I go live and I start telling people, hey guys, Joe and I are in LA. That's our car over there getting towed. Let's go check it out. And so then we start walking over to the car, trying to make jokes about it while I'm crying on the inside, right? Like, I don't know if I have money for this. Finally get to the car. It's all the way on the truck. The guy's leaving, the one who's driving. I'm like, I'll see you in a bit. Don't know where you're taking the car, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. He leaves. This story is a story about the power of social media. Joe and I begin to walk towards, we don't even know where. We're just trying to figure out, where's this car going? And we turn a corner, and two people who were also at LA taking pictures from Loma Linda say, hey, are you Josh from Instagram? I follow you on there. I have no idea who these people are. Never met them before in my life. I'm like, yes, it is me. Also, my car just got towed. Do you mind giving us a ride? And they gave us a ride. There are so many moments in our life that we are unprepared for. And when you're unprepared for moments, you will respond to them with your gut reaction, right? You'll just go for it. You'll try to figure out what it is the next thing that you have to do. And the thing is, the way to prepare for these moments is actually not found in the choices. It's not found in the what? In the choices. The way to prepare for these moments is not found in the choices you make or in your ability to undo the choices. I want to turn our attention today to a story in the Bible. And this is a story that maybe if you've grown up Christian, you've heard told a lot of times in your life. And in this retro series, we want to throw it back to some of these stories that we've grown up on and just learn more about some of the truths that they have for us today. But if you're joining us for the first time, and if you're new to faith or if you're new to the stories of the Bible, one of the reasons that we look to the Bible is because it is a collection of stories of humanity. We want to look into these stories and see if it's actually true, if we can see different areas of these stories that reflect the same life that we are living in. And so we go today to Daniel chapter 3. We're going to begin reading in verse 1 through 3. This is the story about a king and about 3 young men who had to learn the difference between making choices and character building. And it starts off like this. You can read it up on the screen with me. King Nebuchadnezzar. That's a great name for your grandchild, wouldn't it be? That'd be awesome. King Nebuchadnezzar built a gold statue, 90 feet high and 90 feet thick. He set it up on the Dura plan in province of Babylon. He then ordered all the important leaders in the province, everybody who was anybody, to the dedication of the ceremony of the statue. They all came to the declaration, all the important people, and took their places upon the statue that Nebuchadnezzar had made. It's always surprising to me when somebody throws their own party, right? In this moment, the king is throwing himself a party. I feel like it's never a good sign if you've got to throw yourself a party, right? And he wants to make a moment out of this. The king builds a giant gold statue of himself, and he brings in all the leaders of Babylon. He brings in all the people that he has exiled from Jerusalem, brings them all in. And he says, guys, today we are throwing myself a party. And he wants everybody to bow and to worship at this golden statue. And he says to them, we're going to play some music. As soon as you hear the music, as soon as you hear the drums, as soon as you hear the trumpets, as soon as you hear the lyres, which is a type of like stringed instrument, everybody is going to bow and worship to me. And the music goes off, and everybody bows. Everybody begins to worship at the statue, except for 3 young men. 3 of them stay standing. And if you can imagine a sea of people and what it looks like when everybody's kneeling, when everybody's bowing, and there is just a silhouette of 3 off in the distance who refuse to bow. Of course, somebody tells on them. I work with a youth as well on Tuesdays, and there's always one person who's the tattletale, right? And the only reason why I know how to find them is because I used to be the tattletale. And it's interesting because when you're a tattletale, you've got a type of voice, right? They kind of, Johnny did that thing. I don't know why, but like, you guys are laughing. You're a tattletale, that's why you're laughing. You know the voice. Megan did this thing. In the story, there's a guy who literally comes up to the king. He's like, King Nebuchadnezzar. They always do that too, right? I don't know why they do that. King Nebuchadnezzar. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, also really good sons for your children. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refuse to bow and worship. And it's interesting to me that many people try to display their power by harming others. It's interesting to me that when people receive power, that their first version of retaining power is to cause harm. It's to try and make people feel bad about not doing what they're doing. And so the king says, you refuse to bow, you refuse to worship this golden image of myself, I'm gonna give you one more chance. And if you don't do it, you're going into the fire. Something that probably wouldn't happen in 2019, right? Oh man, that'd be scary if that happened. Verse 16 and 18 says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answer the king, your threat means nothing to us. If you throw us in the fire, the God we serve can rescue us from your roaring furnace, O king. But even if he doesn't, it wouldn't make a bit of a difference, O king. And the king gets angry, and he demands that the guards heat up the furnace 7 times hotter. I don't even know what that looks like, right? I don't even know what that looks like thousands of years ago. What do they have to do? Just they got to throw in more wood? What do? Get oil? Yeah, man, we got to find some olive oil. How do we make this thing 7 times hotter? Olive oil, other stuff that's flammable. They don't have what we have. They don't have propane. They don't have those fire logs that you can get at Stater Brothers. They've got to figure out a way to heat this thing up 7 times hotter, because it's what the king wants. And finally, they get the fiery furnace to heat up 7 more times hotter. He gets Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The guards get them. And as they're throwing them into the furnace, the story says that the guards actually burn because it's so hot. And the 3 boys are inside of the fire. And then the crowd, everybody who is looking, begins to freak out. And the king says this, but look, he says, I see 4 men walking around freely in the fire, completely unharmed. The king, he's thrown in 3 young boys who refuse to bow to the image. And as he looks into the furnace, he sees that there is a 4th who is standing there, and that now the 3 boys who were thrown in there, who were bound up, they are released and they are walking freely. And the king says this, the 4th man looks like the son of the gods. End scene. The tragedy is that so many of us would see bowing to statues as acceptable. The tragedy of this story, the tension of this story is that so many people in the masses would see the bowing to the statue as something that is acceptable. What seemed to be not a big deal then usually often turns into a big deal in the future. I have 2 friends that I want to talk about. These were friends in different phases of my life. One of them I grew up with in high school, and he always had an anger issue. And I can remember the type of excuses that he would put. I'm just passionate. Oh man, I get passionate about this stuff, and so that's why I respond the way that I do. And he had an anger problem. He had an anger issue that he left unresolved. He thought that it wasn't a big deal. He didn't see it as something that was unacceptable. It's just anger. And I remember in college, domestic abuse hits his girlfriend, friendship over, his life going into a different trajectory. It was just anger. It was just bowing to a statue. It was just something that wasn't that big of a deal and gone unchecked, and it ruined his life. Another one of my friends, this is in middle school. I didn't know that he was into the drug scene. I didn't know that he did drugs. I didn't know that that was part of his life. I didn't know that addiction was part of his struggle. And I remember in middle school, I show up to school, there's a helicopter hovering above, everybody's crying. I'm like, what's going on? Where's Austin? He had been stabbed 7 times because of a drug deal gone bad. This is in middle school. And all it was just bowing to the statue. All it was a moment in life that somebody thought really wasn't that big of a deal, something that they thought, man, I've got this thing on check. I can deal with this thing. It's just anger. It's just recreational. In an instant, their lives ruined, changed. The tragedy is that so many would see the bowing of the statue as acceptable. But the truth is that the movement of Active Church and what we are doing here is we are showing people that there is a life that God is offering us. And once you catch a glimpse of that life, you're unwilling to trade it for anything. And the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is a story of 3 boys who had seen the life that God wanted for them, and they were unwilling to trade it for anything. And the call for us as a community, the call into your life, is that you would see the thing that God is trying to build in you, so that you don't trade it for anything that is beneath what God wants for your life. Once you have seen the life that God has to offer, once you have seen the life that God is offering you, you cannot unsee it. You will not trade it. The exile process, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were 3 Jewish boys who were from Jerusalem. And during this time, the king Nebuchadnezzar, he was from Babylon, he had taken a portion of the Jewish people into his land as exiles and as slaves. And one of the things that they did first to you as you became part of their community is they would change your name. Their original names are not Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but what's interesting about their story is that though you could call them by a different name, it did not change who they were. That you could call them something different, that you could speak into their life something different. These 3 boys, they knew that their life was about the life that God was building in them, and they were unwilling to trade it for anything. And we live in a culture, we live in a society today that is so good at labeling who we are, what we're about, how we vote, how we do things. And the reality is that those labels have nothing on us when you know who you are. You are called a child of God, and nothing speaks louder than that. Nothing speaks louder than the life and the identity that God has for you right here, right now. Call me what you will, but I know who I am. The truth is, everything in our life is connected, and this is why character building is so important. It's part of the problem because we want God to fix our choices. We want God to fix the problems, but what we really need is for God to change our character. We ask God to change our circumstances, we ask God to change our problem, but oftentimes what God is there is our personality, our character. We ask God to change our lives, and He wants to do it, but He begins if you allow Him to change you. If you allow God to change your life, if you allow God to change your identity, then the choices that you make will begin to change. The problem is that sometimes we want God to fix our choices, but we have not fixed our character. We have not fixed our personality. And so we can outrun the choice, but we're that same person bound to make that choice again. The call of God is for us to be sure of who we are. I know who I am. I am a child of God. I often laugh when I'm driving out on the freeway and you see a car that's got the left back bumper all dented up, or the right back bumper and it's all dented up. And then you see them do a merge into the lane without signaling, right? They go for it, and then somebody's there, and so they have to swerve over. Are you that person? Maybe? No? Maybe? And it always surprises me because you can see the damage on the car, and the way that it probably got there was that same thing. They were merging without putting their light. Our life and the choices that we make are often like that. It's like we want less damage on our lives, but we keep not using the turn signals. We've got to be sure about who we are in the way that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were. Isn't it true that we don't get to decide the temperature of the fire? Isn't it true that we don't get to decide how difficult the trial is going to be? Isn't it true that we don't get to decide how much tension there is going to be at life? We don't get to decide the diagnosis. We don't get to decide if we get fired or not. We don't get to decide how things are going to work out in this sense. We don't get to decide the temperature of the fire, but you can choose. You can choose what you will bring into the fire. I want to live a life that has the undeniable presence of God. I want to live a life that any circumstance that I walk into, any fire moment in my life that I walk into, has the undeniable presence of God in it. I cannot decide the temperature of the heat. I cannot decide what will come my way, but I can decide who stands next to me. And I choose the undeniable presence of God. Everyone has 4 to 6 life-changing moments in their lives. And these moments, they've got the ability to provide you with momentum that moves you into the rest of your life. For some people, it starts at an early age, in elementary, or it starts in middle school or in high school. They make a decision about what is going to be their career path. And it isn't actually them signing up to the college, it isn't them actually going through the course. The life-changing moment is them sitting in that room and making the decision, I'm gonna choose to become this in life. And that decision right then and there is the fire. They have chosen something. They have chosen their identity. They are choosing to step from the comfort of looking at the fireplace and moving into it. Moving into the unseen, moving into the scary, moving into the mysterious to see what life has to offer them. It happens in middle school, it happens in high school, it happens again when you graduate from university or when you graduate from your program and you move into the next phase of your life. It is the fire. Marriage can be the fire. It is the decision that you're making to partner with this person for the rest of your life to live the life that God wants for you. And for some of us, some of these moments come in the form of tragedy. For some of us, some of these life-changing moments come in the unexpected. We experience loss, we experience a diagnosis, we experience something that we never wished would happen in our life. And you're in the fire, and you must decide not the temperature of the circumstance, but you must decide who stands with you. And as Active Church, we want to be the type of community that steps into the fire with the undeniable presence of God. We want to be a community that is known for having so much love, so much hope, so much desire for the future that God has for our lives, that wherever we go, whether it's gathering here on a Sunday or standing in the grocery line on Monday or being in the freeway on Tuesday, anywhere that we go, that people would say, there is somebody else in the fire with them. There is something divine and undeniable that we cannot comprehend. You don't get to choose the temperature of the fire, but you get to choose who stands with you. To accept Jesus is not the end of crisis. To accept Jesus does not mean that the fire ends. To accept Jesus into your life doesn't mean that the diagnosis goes away. To accept Jesus doesn't mean that the tension and the crisis leaves. To accept Jesus is the beginning of courage. To accept Jesus into your life, to accept God into your life is the beginning of courage. It's the beginning of you being able to walk freely in the fire and know that God is with you and that there is a family who is behind you, that supports you, that cares for you, and that will move through fire with you. When you accept Jesus, you're not losing the crisis. When you accept Jesus, you are moving into the courage that he has to offer you. I have a friend, her name is Cecia, and growing up, we went on a mission trip together with a couple of other students, and she's really good at playing the cello. Cello is like a giant version of the violin, except that you play it down here. It's got the bass notes. And I remember seeing her grow up. I was always so proud of her. She sings opera. She's a great vocalist, sang on worship teams. She's a piano teacher. She's studying music therapy, which is a way of teaching people to deal with their problems and with their life through music. It's amazing work that she does. And a couple of years ago, she received a diagnosis that cannot be undone, that she just has to live with for the rest of her life. And it's really unfortunate because her life is purposed around music. Her life is purposed around teaching others to enjoy the sounds of instruments and of their voice and of piano and of different instruments. And the diagnosis that she received is that she will lose her hearing. Recently, she started using the hearing aids. She's beautiful. She's in her 30s. Awesome girl. She does not get to decide the temperature of the fire. But she chose that even though she's losing her hearing, she will spend the rest of her life teaching people how to listen to each other. There is somebody who is prepared for what comes after the fire. The promise of the gospel and the promise of who Jesus is in your life is not that the temperature of the fire will change, but that you will be changed. You can decide what you will do after the fire fades. One of the beautiful things that stands out to me in this text is that whenever the boys were in conversation with the king, they always spoke of each other in plural. They said, "Your threat, king, it means nothing to us." Not, "Hey, king, your threat means nothing to me." They spoke for each other. "Your threat, it means nothing to us. If you throw us in the fire, God, the God we serve, can rescue us." These boys had made a decision to choose each other. They chose the life that God was giving them. They chose the character that God was calling them into, and they chose each other. And here at Active Church, as a community, we choose each other. You can look around in the room and you can see all the people, all the different stories. And to be part of Active Church is not just to be here in a relationship with God on your own. To be here at Active Church means that you choose every person that is in this room as well. We choose to stand in these battles together. Growing up, I was never really good at the sports. You can always tell that somebody isn't good at the sports when they call it the sports, right? And I remember, or not so much, he was like 3 or 4 years older than me. And he knew that I wasn't super athletic. And there's a type of anxiety that happens when teams are being chosen, right? Because you never want to be the person that's going to be picked last. And for whatever reason, this friend would always choose me first. It was the coolest feeling because I knew, man, I'm not even going to do good in this game. It's not going to go well, but at least my friend Aldo, he's chosen me. And a couple of years ago, I was reading a book, and it just kind of brought up these emotions of like thanking people who have been pivotal in your life. And for whatever reason, he was one of the first names that popped up into my mind. And so I sent him a text. And I want to read to you that text. And then I want to read to you his response. I said, "Hey bro, was doing some reading today, had some sentimental stuff in it, haha. And it got me thinking. Just wanted to reach out and thank you. I was remembering that you often picked me for sports stuff when we were growing up, and for whatever reason, it was more meaningful than it probably was for most." And then he responded with this perspective. "I always saw your brother and you as my brothers. Always wanted to be on the same team as y'all. Love you, brother." End of the conversation. And I'm imagining today what it would be like if we as a community could step into that mindset. If we would not just look at the skills and the qualifications of people for our lives, but that we would just look at each other and see, there too walks a child of God. That's my brother, that's my sister, and I choose them. I wonder how different the fire in our lives would feel. I wonder how different the tension and the trials and the difficult circumstances would be if we would be able to look at each other right here in this place right now and say, we choose each other. This is my family, and I will journey through the fire with them. The story of God's moving is not just in the lives of the three friends, but that God was also trying to reach the king. That whole story is not just how awesome the three boys were and the decision that they made. That story is about the continual grace of God to always extend, to help the king see that he too was a child of God. That he too had purpose, that he too had access to the undeniable presence of God. And the beauty of this story is that as the three boys walk out of the fire, the king recognizes who goes with them. And for the rest of his reign, though he had his ups and downs, he recognized the God of Israel, the God that we worship today. I don't know what your story is or what your circumstance of fire is, but I want you to know that we get to choose each other, that we get to be in this thing together. And as we do that, the undeniable presence of God is with us. And what's difficult is that even in a moment of tension like this, what if we could use our pain? What if we could use our despair? What if we could use the most difficult moments of our lives to inspire all of humanity? The thing about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is that they caught a vision of a life that was worth dying for, and they were not willing to trade it for anything. And the move of Jesus in your life is that in Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11, God said to the community of Daniel, to the community of his three friends who were going through this experience, he says, "For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil. Yes, there might be fire. Yes, the temperature might be hot, but it's not God's plan for you to stay in the fire. It is to give you a future and a hope. And the life that is in front of you, God is calling you to step into fully, to choose each other, to live with confidence, to live in the identity as a child of God, and to move forward and to help everyone tell a better story in their lives." You can take your fire and use it to stir up the flame in somebody else. You can take your tension, you can take your most difficult moment in life and use it to inspire somebody to see the undeniable presence of God. The true crisis of humanity isn't the fire, it's that we've not found a life worth living for, and that life is found in Jesus. I'm gonna invite the worship team to come on out, and we're gonna do a moment of offerings and giving, and then we're also gonna sing a song together. But in this moment, I just wanna invite everybody to close your eyes. This is just to give people privacy. I know that some of you, you're in the fire. Some of you, you're in that life-changing moment. And maybe you don't feel like the presence of God is with you. Maybe you don't know that He's there. But I want to declare to you in this moment that as you are in the fire, that Jesus stands with you. And that we as a church, we stand with you as well. We choose each other. I want to invite some of you to step into the life that God is calling you into. And that means you've got to move away from the fire into the life that He's calling you. And it's simple. It's just a prayer. It's just the opening of a conversation with God. I'm going to invite you to step into that life by simply saying this: Jesus, I give you my story and I give you my life. Pray that with me in your heart. Jesus, I give you my story and I give you my life. That's not the end of the conversation. It is the beginning of the courage that you can now have in Jesus. Move forward into the rest of your life with confidence, knowing that the undeniable presence of God is with you. May you know and may you trust that we as Active Church, we choose you. Let's pray. God, we just want to thank you for what you are doing in our lives. And as we stand here as a church, perhaps in fire or perhaps looking at the fire, we trust this morning that we can go into this together, that you will be with us, and that the fire will not be end of the story, but rather it will be the beginning of the life that you have for us. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you again for joining us for this week's message. We believe your generosity is changing the world. If you'd like to partner with us, click the link in the description below. And we'll see you again next week.